And I will call to order this committee of the whole meeting of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores, and welcome everyone who is watching the live stream this evening, and welcome all the members of the committee. The second item on the agenda is disclosure of pecuniary interest. Ask any member if you have one of those you'd like to declare. Seeing none, of course, you can do that anytime if you need to. We have no open forum, we have no delegations, we have no public meeting. I'd like to ask Council's unanimous consent to reorder the agenda. We have the consultant here for the Lamont Sports Park presentation, and also it strikes me that it would make more sense for us to hear the North Shore Trail report first before we hear the traffic bylaw update. So I would like us to hear both community services, parks and recreation reports right off the top of the meeting. Is there unanimous consent to do that? Yeah, looks like there's consent. So we're going to do that then. So that will move us then. We're going to go to 7.4, community services, parks and recreation. And the first report is a staff report on the Lamont Sports Park concept plans and a presentation by the consultant. And we'll start with the Director of Community Services.
Good evening and thank you. The Lamont Sports Park Advisory Committee has been working closely with Sports Turf International for several months in developing a conceptual design plan for the Lamont Sports Park. The 10-year plan has been designed in such a way that it can be constructed in phases. Phases will be determined based on varying factors when the community and municipality are prepared and when it makes sense to proceed to the next phase. The representation on the committee was from our ball community, and it ensures that all the needs are being met within the design. This took a number of meetings to ensure consensus was met. At this point, I'd like to introduce Gord Dole, and I believe Harry may be on the line as well. They're both from Sports Turf International to explain the overall plan and the different phases.
Can everybody hear me?
We can hear you fine. Hello.
Okay. All right. I just keep cutting in and out here. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for your time today. My name is Gord Dahl from Sports Turf International. My partner Harry is
I'm here.
In here somewhere. We're going to present to you the concepts and budgets for the Lamont Sports Park. Okay, some of our deliverables was to consult with the key stakeholders throughout the process. And at this point, I would like to thank Chair Matheson, Councillor Schreider, Director Jagalowski, Parks Manager Burrows, Mr. Hardy, and the entire Lamont Sports Park Committee. We did have numerous meetings, both in person and more recently online, as well as we hosted a public meeting in the fall. We believe that went very well. The entire team worked very hard on the plan that you were about to see. Some of our deliverables was obviously to develop conceptual drawings incorporating various amenities. We did do a review of the existing ball facilities. We did do a review of the existing recreation master plan. We developed a phased approach for construction as well as a cost analysis. Some of the information for the current field assessment is in a report that we completed last fall. In summary, your current fields are in reasonable condition. Included in the report is improved turf cultural and maintenance program. We did note some minor issues with grading, fencing, and with the lighting. And the image that you see above is Beaner Park 1. You will see some of the lighting levels are down at around 6.9. The newer standards right now are what we call 50-30, i.e. 50-foot candles in the infield and 30 in the outfield. I do want to draw your attention, if you could see my cursor right here, last year or 2 years ago, there was one of the poles that was replaced with new lights. And you can see in there, we actually have much better light levels. We did do a review of the master plan. Here are some of the recommendations, including creating a new sports field complex, providing 2 lit ball diamonds over the next 5 years, And then once the town implements the new fields, we can start to look at closing off some of the ones that aren't going to be used. In our opinion, the findings of the 2016 master plan is current and relevant. And this is what it's going to look like. This will be phase one. I hope you can all see my my cursor. There'll be 4 diamonds in a pinwheel. Right in the center would be this would be in future phases, but this will be an octagon shaped pavilion with 2 levels. Out here would be all hard structure, and beyond here would be shade structure. This is the phase 1 pinwheel, or sorry, phase 2, I guess it is. Phase 1 would be, depending on how things are put together, would be the road, the parking lot, along with bringing in electrical services, possible water services. This would be a second pinwheel that would be developed in the future. Also, we've made allowances for future development and a maintenance yard. This is a closer look of how it would look. As I said, in the center would be an octagon-shaped pavilion. This all here would be hard structure, and then we would have sunshades going out further. We've made room to put batting cages. There's lots of room underneath for bleachers, tables, picnic tables, anything we'd ever want to put in there. This is just a different view. Now, this part of it here, it would actually be under hard structure. We would do some sort of an eco stone that will allow water to seep through underneath. In the pavilion, we would have a concession stand, we'd have washrooms, we'd have a umpire change room. We would also have above would be for scorekeepers and announcers, which can also double as a meeting room or tournament office or whatever you want to do with that area. This would be a close up of the pavilion. There again, here's the upper floor. We intended on keeping it wide open so it can be used for pretty much anything. The lower floor, we have the concession stand, walk-in cooler, umpire room, men's and women's washrooms. And of course, upstairs would have the timekeeper and scorekeeper tables. Here's a different view you can see as an overhead. There again, the octagon building. We would have bleachers in here, players, benches, enclosed dugouts, that kind of thing. Here's a bit of a budget, Here's a budget for basically a 10-year plan. Phase 1, which we call the site grading, site surfaces, roadways, parking lots, landscaping, we anticipate anywhere between 1.6 and 2 million. Phase 2 would be the north pinwheel, and we anticipate that being somewhere between 1.6 and 2.1. Future phases you can see here. On top of that would be contingency and design and project management fees. And with that, I'll take questions.
Sure. Okay. Well, thanks very much for that, Gord and Harry. And we'll look for questions or comments from members of the committee. Hold on a second here if I can. Oops, that's not what I want. The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, Gord was correct. The committee worked very hard on this. We went through several designs and we tried to meet the needs of what we felt were best for the community. Our final take on this is a phased in construction. We know that at the moment, if we build that first pinwheel, and Jane will concur with this, we build that first pinwheel that allows us to meet the needs of everything we have. And as we go along, we'll be able to phase out some of the older diamonds that we don't need, such as Southampton back or whatever. But this meets all our needs. So the first phase comes in at about $5 million, but you got to remember half of that is for the infrastructure of bringing the amenities in from the concession. And once we have that in there, the cost of the second phase and future development land is going to be greatly reduced. But the committee all agreed on this, and I think Councilor Schreider can add anything she wants, but I think we did a good job, and I'm looking forward to see the business plan coming in a couple weeks.
Thanks very much, Councilor Madsen. And just before I take Councilor Schreider, I just want to say to you and to Councilor Schreider and to all members of the committee, thank you for your work. We very much appreciate the work of the committee. This essentially brings the committee's work to an end, but we have appreciated very much the work of the entire committee. I'll get Councilor Schreider, then I'll come back to the Deputy Mayor. Councilor Schreider.
Perfect, and thank you, and through you, Donnie is absolutely right. Harry and Gord were tremendous to work with. I think that that they were able to take what our committee, which is a very, very strong minded committee, and they represented the community very, very well, respectively of their groups as well. This is a conceptual design for our community to be proud of and to work towards. I think the phased-in approach makes this dream that we've all been dreaming about for so long attainable, and it's attainable over the next few years. In a phased-in approach. So I think that our volunteers that sat on this committee, they did a wonderful job. So thank you to them. Thank you to Jane and Frank and Steve and Allison that helped out with that committee as well. I think that we're really eager. We're looking forward to seeing this project kick off and have it planned in over the next few years and seeing some presentations at budget time as well. So thank you.
Sure. The Deputy Mayor wanted to add something. The Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to say this at the beginning. When this first started, I played a lot of ball and traveled all around. One of the premier ball complexes that I saw was down by Barrie at Menacing, and I said to Jason, man, I'd like to have something like that. Well, we're fortunate that the gentlemen who designed that complex are the gentlemen and company that we have to look at designing ours. Their knowledge and expertise has been great. They found the little things that we missed. They brought it in. The job they did was great. I want to say thank you to them for all the work that they did. But what we didn't say was Councilor Schreider is now also chairing the fundraising committee that's looking at raising some money to do those extras. So I know people will be saying, well, what about the Kraft Heinz money? That is there. That is going to be in kind of one of those phases we look at, where do we put in the Playscape? Playscape is there. We are wanting to look at widening the rail trail so that people can have access for their bicycles to get in and out, because we know the best part about our baseball leagues is they travel on bicycle. They're very eco-friendly, especially on playoff weekend, but everybody travels there. And if we were to widen the rail trail a little bit and maybe put some solar lights on there, there'll be very little vehicular traffic going to and from the ball diamond at nights. They'll be traveling up the rail trail. So I look forward to that second phase, where we'll come back to council later and say, this is what we want to do. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me to say that.
Yeah, no, thank you. Further comments from other members of the committee? The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your presentation, Gord, and I know Jane's listening in here. I have a question, Jane, I think in terms of the business plan that's coming to council, I believe on July 13th, Jane. And I'm wondering, with the business plan, are you showing 2 diamonds in your business plan for phase 1, or are you going to be showing 4 diamonds in your business plan, Jane? In Monteith Brown, just before you answer that question, Monteith Brown, in their 2016 report, they called for 2 diamonds over the next 3 to 5 years. And page 61, and they went further to say that there should be another 2 to 3 diamonds for the next 5 to 10 years after that. So I just wanted to hear from you, Jane. I have a few more comments too, but what are you going to be presenting in your business plan in terms of, because it's important to hear this evening whether you're writing a business plan for 2 diamonds or 4 diamonds, in my view. One of the statements Gord mentioned was that it is our opinion that the findings of the 2016 master plan is current and relevant. So I want to ask Gord that question too. But Jane, could you answer first the question around, in your business plan, are you showing 2 or 4 diamonds?
It certainly wasn't my, I wasn't expecting to present the business plan tonight, but what I can tell you is part of the
13th.
I provided you with a couple of council with a couple of options for consideration. So I've certainly looked at 4 and I've looked at 2, and we have those numbers together to present to council for the 13th.
Okay. So thanks for that. Gord, you mentioned that it is our opinion that the findings of the 26 master plan is current and relevant. What do you mean by that, Gord?
They're calling for a couple of initial new diamonds initially. However, when we looked at the whole system of ball diamonds, we're looking at it from the opinion that we think that the 4 diamonds should go in. Once the 4 diamonds go in, diamonds like Lakeview and Cameron should be shut down, and those areas, those parks can be repurposed. At the point of the 4 new diamonds opening up, we're suggesting is to put some improvements into the Beaner diamonds to set them up better for baseball. And then at some point down the road, when the need arises, is when you'd start looking at building additional diamonds.
I see, Gord. So you are, in your recommendation as a consultant for this report, you are recommending that phase 1, well, it'll be phase 2. Phase 1's the infrastructure in 2020, yes. But 2021 is the actual construction of the diamonds. You are in fact recommending that phase 2 for the 4 diamonds include 4 diamonds, 4 yes. Lit diamonds, correct?
Yes, because if you look at, and I brought up the lighting issue on some of the fields, that is a problem with all of the diamonds. We felt that if we built the 4 new lit diamonds, if you close the Cameron diamonds, those are not lit anyway. You know, and repurpose it, sell it, do whatever you want with that area. And the same thing goes for Lakeview. Our plan is to suggest to leave the Beaner diamonds and the Jubilee diamond open.
Good. And just a couple of comments, Mr. Mayor, and I had prepared this for this evening, so I'll just present it to council for their information. But in the 2016 Monteith report, Monteith states that a town's requirement for ball facilities is 1 diamond per 100 players. That's the provincial standard. Gord would know that. That come right from Monteith. That's from other municipalities. Seems to be the standard according to Monteith, who's written two or three reports for Saugeen Shores. That's what they use as the basis for their report. So I'm going to go with 100 players per 1 diamond. I just want to say to you that, you know, there were 1,249 ball players in that 2016 report. And since then, over the last 4 years, we have added, back then there was 1 girls fastball team, 1. This year, if ball had went ahead, there would have been 8 girls fastball teams, which is pretty incredible. We've also in the last 4 years added a net. Men's slow pitch have dropped 2 or 3 teams, but ladies slow pitch has gone up by 8. They've gone from 3 to 11. Pardon me, not 3 to 11, 11 to 21, I should say. So they've gone up 10 teams, men's slow pitch gone down 3. So a net additional 7 teams since 2016, and minor ball numbers have gone up 150 registrations. So, you know, I just wanted to illustrate that to council to let you know that the 4 diamonds is the right number. You know, I had heard maybe some comments, maybe we should be doing 2. I don't think that's the right approach. So I just want to make comment on that. That 4 diamonds to me is the right approach, Gord. So thanks for recommending that. I would hope that the business plan, when we see it, will definitely include 4 fields. So I just wanted to share those numbers with council tonight.
Thank you, Councilor Schreiber.
Thank you, and through you, and the Vice Deputy Mayor is correct about the growing numbers. Gord touched on it a little bit as well about the sequencing of when, if 4 new ones are built and all of those diamonds would be lit diamonds. We increase our capacity for the amount of games that we can host in one evening. If we remove 2 diamonds like Cameron that do not have lights, we're already doubling our capacity then for those nights as well. So I just want everybody to be aware of that. And I know that Jane will talk about that in the business plan as well, is that if we get 4 in phase 2 and removing of those camera ones, is that we do increase our capacity to host more games, which will alleviate the strain on the growing numbers that we have in our leagues as well.
Okay, thank you. I think I saw Councilor Mayette. Councilor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, This is all really exciting, and I look forward also to seeing it come to fruition. But just to put a voice out there for the 57% of respondents who didn't say they participated in baseball, who are members of our community, who we're going to ask to contribute a significant portion of their tax dollars into this project. We have assurances that the burden will be somewhat lessened when we talk about repurposing some of the diamonds that are going to be retired after this complex is built. Could we see those, or do we see those being repurposed into it's like selling of the land, or in the case of Lakeview, adding more campsites and hence increased revenue streams, and having an assurance that the burden won't be borne 100% by the taxpayer. I know we have the Kraft Heinz money, which is going to have a significant contribution there, but there's some assurances that there's a plan in place so that there'll be recouping some funds so it's not all burdened by the taxpayer. Thank you.
I think what you're going to see is a business plan come forward here, and that's going to be where the rubber hits the road on paying for this. And there's no question we're going to have to look at things like that. The all-in phase one, based on this chart that I'm looking at here with the Class C markup of 25%, is $8.314 million. That's a lot of money. So if we're going to come up with that kind of money, we're going to have to repurpose some land. We're going to have to do other things over a few years to be able to afford that and not burden the taxpayer to that extent. I agree with you, Councillor Mayette, that the taxpayer can't be burdened to that extent. We have to find other sources of funding to help offset the cost of that. So, but that's going to come with the business plan in the next couple of weeks, or I guess, or at our next meeting. So we can discuss that then. Further comments from members? It doesn't look like it, so I'll just reiterate once again my thanks, and on behalf of council, thanks to the committee for all the work that they have done. This is an exciting project, one we've been wanting to see move forward for a long time. There's still lots to do to figure out how to do it affordably, and how to do it in the right way. And there's lots of opportunity in this for the community beyond just baseball, frankly, and in the development of the Lamont facility. And so I'm quite confident we're going to make our way through it and hopefully get some shovels in the ground on this facility. And one thing I'll add into is I'm very keen, I should say we, I guess I speak for myself on this, I hope everyone agrees with me. I'm very keen to see that Kraft Heinz money put toward an accessible playground inside that facility. We have I see $75,000 in here for playground. Hope we can make that a lot more than that, using that Kraft Heinz money, and do something in addition to the baseball. I wouldn't want to see that money just poured into a diamond or something. I would like to see it, as we promised to the community when we talked about that see it enhance the accessible features in that facility. So I'm very keen to see that come along in future presentations on this project. Anyway, with that, I'll say thank you very much, Gord and Harry. We appreciate your time very much, and have a good evening.
You're very welcome.
So that moves us then on.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, the deputy mayor, sorry.
Is there not a recommendation to receive this report then tonight? Does that have to go forward, or?
There probably is. I'm experiencing, the computer I use for this has got some issues. So I'll ask Linda. Are you there?
Yes.
If there's a recommendation, would you read it, please?
I have it right here, Mr. Mayor.
That's fine.
There is a recommendation that we receive the Lamont Sports Park concept plan presented by Sports Turf International.
Thanks for reading that, Councillor. If there's no further questions or comments, then I'll ask all in favor. That's carried. Okay, so that moves us then on to our second Community Services, Parks and Recreation report, which is a staff report on the North Shore Trail. And I suspect the Director of Community Services and the Director of Infrastructure and Development will speak to us on this. The Director of Community Services.
Great, thank you. Staff have continued to keep council updated on the status of the discussion of the North Shore Trail and Road. The North Shore Trail has long been an attraction for cyclists, walkers, joggers, rollerbladers, and anyone else seeking out active transportation options while enjoying the vistas of Lake Huron. The trail was built to ensure these patrons had a safer option for their leisure pursuits. As our population has increased, as well as our day visitors, it has become evident that the planning and construction of the North Shore Trail was a positive move by council approved more than 11 years ago. With international travel not occurring this summer, this community is going to begin to see an influx with day travelers who are coming for a short retreat to experience all the amenities Saugeen Shores has to offer. The highlight of their trip will be our respective trail system, particularly along the North Shore Road. These visitors will play a pinnacle role with our economic recovery as they will patronize our downtown cores for meals and shopping. This temporary solution for a complex issue will ensure the safety of our trail users and at the same time allowing staff the time required to ensure a sustainable resolution for the repair of the trail. This will take time, but will allow staff the opportunity to work with respective authorities in developing a plan moving forward. The financial impact is anticipated to be up to $10,000 for purchase and placement of concrete barriers and signage. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a recommendation. I'll read it and then we can take questions or comments. It's recommended that council approve a temporary one-way option for the North Shore Road from McVicker Street to Hilly Lane, and that the North Shore Road from Hilly Lane heading north to Concession 10 remain two-way southbound for local traffic only, and the traffic bylaw be updated to reflect one-way street North Shore Road from McVicker Street to Hilly Lane from June 26th to September 7th, 2020, and the speed limit on the North Shore Road be reduced from 40 kilometers an hour to 30 kilometers an hour from McVicker Street to Hilly Lane and Miramichi Bay Road from Concession 10 to Bayview Point Road. Questions or comments from the committee members? There's a few. Where shall I start? How about Councillor Grace?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be voting to support staff's recommendation on the report. I want to commend everyone who took the time to provide input and to staff for revising their original proposal to reduce public inconvenience as much as possible. I truly regret the inconvenience that will be experienced by those homeowners whose driveways border on the affected section of the North Shore Road. For me, however, the deciding factor in this decision is public safety and our municipality's liability in controlling this roadway and taking all reasonable steps to make it safe as possible. In 2016, the Ontario Court of Appeals upheld a 2015 lower court ruling in favor of a cyclist who sustained injuries, rendering him a quadriplegic after he fell while riding his bike over a teeter-totter type obstacle at the Bruce Peninsula Mountain Bike Adventure Park. Although the municipality had posted signs warning cyclists to ride within their ability and at their own risk, that a promotional brochure for the park contained a warning that mountain biking can be risky, and that the plaintiff voluntarily assumed the risk of riding in the park, the lower court still found the municipality had breached its duty to users of the park by not doing enough to protect park users. The judge in the case cited the Ontario Occupiers Liability Act. Under this act, an occupier or owner of a property, including a municipality, has a duty to keep anyone coming onto the property reasonably safe from harm. When someone is injured due to an unsafe condition, then the occupier or owner may be found negligent in causing those injuries. In a lawsuit, liability can be defeated by showing that the municipality took reasonable steps to prevent an injury from arising, that it met the current regulated standard at the time, or that the municipality did not or could not reasonably have known about the state of the repair of the highway or the bridge. This last responsibility stems from the legal principle of foreseeability. The foreseeability test basically asks whether the person causing the injury should have reasonably foreseen the general consequences that would result because of his or her conduct. While in some cases, Ontario courts have imposed a lesser duty of care on the occupiers of recreational trails, even in a Brantford case where the court held a plaintiff to be partially responsible because of careless cycling behavior, the municipality was still held to be contributorily negligent because of design and maintenance deficiencies of a public trail. How do these legal precedents relate to our situation with the North Shore Trail and Road? Because the municipality owns the trail and adjacent road, and under the Occupiers Liability Act and the Municipal Act, the town is responsible for its repair and safe maintenance. The town is aware of unsafe conditions along the trail. The town has openly placed barriers and bollards to deter and prevent public access to damaged areas. This plan is proposing a safe alternative, using the southbound lane so pedestrians and cyclists have adequate room for safe use. These actions could be used in a future lawsuit to prove that the town foresaw greater risk. By turning the southbound lane into a trail for the summer months, the town is taking reasonable actions to reduce that risk and protect itself from future liability. Our directors from 2 departments, Infrastructure and Community Services, have gathered input from over 1,500 members of the public and from our police and fire chief. Based on this feedback, staff revised the plan to be the least disruptive to affected residents as possible and are recommending that this plan is the best and safest option for continued use of this roadway by all members of the public. A number of public comments expressed concern about continued safe access to emergency vehicles. Our fire and police chiefs have reviewed the plan and stated that this plan will still provide safe access to emergency vehicles for residents in this area. Just this morning, I double-checked with Chief Eagleson, who confirmed for me that his department will be able to maintain the level of service to properties in this area with minimal impact to response times. Under the Ontario Municipal Act, duties of council include considering the well-being and interests of the municipality and maintaining the financial integrity of the municipality. I will support this report because I believe this plan will best protect public safety and the municipality's financial interests. Based on the court's ruling in the Bruce Peninsula Park case, which found liability partially because of its failure to post adequate warning signage, if this proposal is approved, I would ask staff to ensure that signage and barriers are increased along the trail. Thank you.
Councilor Grace. How about we get Councilor Rich next? You were
just unmuting, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. Through you. I as well will be supporting this recommendation, but I do have a couple of caveats. I think that the correspondence that I received from community members said that their fear was this was going to be an ongoing fix, that we might have this perpetually every summer. So I'd like to get some assurances from staff that we will research other options. I think I've had numerous suggestions. One was that we could make the bike trail go behind the houses at Hilly Lane and connect in with Fenton Drive. But I know that the cost will probably be obtrusive to try and repair these sections of roads. We have to do what's financially best for the community. I'd like to see that area of the road become a community safety zone, some more signage with regard to hidden driveways, because I think that that is what places cyclists at risk. One of the other things that maybe a lot of people don't know, the manager of the Walker House was struck by a van only a couple of weeks ago, just traveling down that roadway in broad daylight. So, I mean, there is a significant public safety risk. And even though I think it will be obtrusive to certain members of the community who have houses that come out onto that road, I think as a municipality, it's imperative that we take public safety into consideration. But from staff, I would like to see a number of different options when we go forward next year, so we make sure that we make the best decision possible and not just perpetually go with a one-way road, because that's the easiest possible solution.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Councillor Maya.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I am not going to be supporting this recommendation. I am of the opinion that the North Shore Road and that byway was a road first, and it should remain a road. The majority of respondents to the survey were clearly against it. That the people who live on that section in particular are going to be significantly negatively affected. In fact, every person that I was in contact with who lives in the streets that are fed by North Shore Road, without exception, everyone was against this. This section of trail is wholly within my ward, so I'm familiar with it quite a bit, and I'm also familiar with what it's like to have your road impaired. I lived on Concession 6, and our road was closed for about a year and a half, and we had to take about an 8-kilometer detour to get into town, which is normally a 2.5-kilometer run, and it's significantly distracting when you're used to having a quick run into town, and now you have to go all the way around the concession block. Serious cyclists don't use the trail anyway. When you're driving along that road, my wife drove the trolley for a few years, and she told me that the serious bikers, the Tour de France type bikers, they ride on the road anyway. They don't ride on the trail. They've already been riding on the road, and I'm sorry to hear about that recent accident that Councillor Rich just brought up. But generally speaking, motorists on that road are used to seeing cyclists on the road, and the common courtesy rules apply, and as they apply on all roads in Saugeen Shores that are shared with cyclists. If we need to, if we're going to expect a increase in cycling and pedestrian traffic, then we can put in speed calming measures. We can reduce the speed to 30 kilometers an hour. We can put in speed bumps or chicanes, whatever it might be. But to significantly inconvenience the members of our community who are fed in the community neighborhoods that are fed by these roads, I think it's wholly unfair. And for those reasons, I am adamantly against this as a temporary measure or as a permanent measure. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I think I saw the Deputy Mayor earlier, and then I'll come to Councillor Schreider. Okay, Councillor Schreider then.
Thank you very much. And through you, I definitely struggle with this one. I'm a very, very recreation-minded person, very involved with the trails, the trail network throughout our municipality. And I think that we are so very fortunate because we have 3 different trail systems that can get us through all 3 of our smaller communities, all 3 of our smaller towns in Saugeen Shores. We have the North Shore Trail that we're talking about that is very, very popular and well-traveled. We also have the Saugeen Rail Trail that is an excellent, excellent trail. And then we have, I'll call it the Woodland or the Bush Trail that also gets us in through our communities. We are so fortunate in Saugeen Shores to have those trails. The survey, the numbers where I come from, the numbers that stand out to me and the percentages are the 14% of people that responded to the survey, 14% of those people live in the affected area. 57% of those people are not okay with it being a one-way. So I think that the majority of those people that are along there, and much like Councillor Mayette as well, anybody that reached out to me except for one was not in favor of this. I do understand liability. I think Councillor Grace has made some excellent points when it comes to that. I also am very aware that everything that we do has a liability. I think all of our parks, all of our playgrounds, all of our roads and our sidewalks, we accept that liability. We try everything that we can do to minimize the risk and the hazard. And I think staff do an excellent job of that. I think that this would be a safe alternative. I'm just not sure it's the best alternative. I would have liked to have seen maybe an option or two other options to consider. But I don't think I'll be supporting this recommendation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, To begin, I'd like to thank our directors, Jaglowski and Froese, for the work they did. I think this is a tough decision. It's a tough concept to have to handle. And I want to thank them for all the work they did on this. I happened to be out at Canadian Tire this past week and was getting ready to head out, and I saw a couple my age, maybe a little older, unloading their truck with bicycles. So I thought I'd say, go over and introduce myself and ask them what they're doing. They're from Guelph, and they come up here every week to ride our trails. They said, today we're going to McGregor Point for the morning, then we're going to go along the shore to Southampton, have something to eat, and then we're going to take your woodland trails back in. They said, we can't get enough of the roads that you have. That tells you a lot. Saugeen Shores is an active transportation town. That means not just motor vehicles. That means walking, riding, biking, cars, everything. We have recently been given the bronze designation as a bicycle-friendly town. We're working towards our silver designation for a bicycle-friendly town. To do that, you have to have more roads. If you look through the last 3 months of the COVID-19 pandemic, what are most cities doing? They're reducing their roadways to add more bicycle lanes. Why? It's because people are staying home and they're more active. They're getting out. You can't do much, but you can get out, walk and ride your bicycle, take the kids out. Now, to say that we want to send them through the trails, that's fine. They're great trails. I love them. Councillor Rich and I ride all the trails in this community a couple times a week. But you ask why they go along the shore? It's because of the vista. It's the view. You cannot say you can't go that way because somebody doesn't want you to go that way. This also has a financial impact. We're looking at our economic recovery in town. People come to this community because we are designated as a 4-season tourist attraction. People come to ride their bikes. You look anywhere in town, in Southampton, in Port Elgin, at the Plex, at Canadian Tire. People are unloading their vehicles with bicycles. They ride this area. Councillor Grace was bang on when she talked about the liability. It doesn't matter what happens, you can take all the precautions, but if something happens, we are liable. And some people would say, well, just fix the road. The people are going on it anyways. Well, yes, they are going on the trail at the moment because there is no alternative. There's nowhere else to go. So if we were to make this for 2 months, from the end of June to the 1st of September, a one-way street, I know it is a little distracting for some of the residents that are on there, but we are providing for them. I've traveled it a couple of times. It adds about 4 or 5 minutes to their trip, but we are taking into account the survey that was done. We counted the number of people. 15,000 people used that trail last July. We have to make sure that they have ample places to go. We're going to be looking at fixing the trail, and we're going to have to close off sections. So where do those people go? If we put the bollards on and the barriers, as Jane said, we're going to add that safety feature. As Amanda has said, we're going to reduce the speed. That is very important. It gets a little faster. It doesn't matter if there's a pathway or not. Reducing the speed is going to be a big help. I will be supporting this because I've been on the active transportation committee. I've been pushing the bicycle friendly. We need this in town. It's economic based. But what I'd also like to see is a huge public news release training, not only for vehicles, but for cyclists as well. The do's and don'ts of riding. A lot of people don't like to ride on our roads because cars don't give them the due respect. They will go around an animal before they will go around a cyclist. They don't give them the due space that is required. This is going to provide a safe venue from McVicker Street to the 10th. Then we go back to normal at the top of the hill. Everything is good. So, Mr. Mayor, I hope council members, before you vote, even if you're considering not voting it for it now, this is an option for this year, 2 months. Please consider this. Look at the people that we have. It's not just the people that are coming in. It is our local residents who take their young children down there on their bicycles for some of their first rides, in their trailers, rollerblading. Please consider this for 2 months. And as we get things fixed, we'll make sure we get it back to normal for next year and we don't have to worry about it. But this is a viable solution for the next 2 months. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Further comments from members? Councillor Smith.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, much like Councillor Schreider, I've struggled with this decision, and I came into tonight's discussion very much open-minded and looking forward to this discussion, which has proven to be very fruitful in terms of lots of great information to be shared. the options that are presented before us are to either be in favor or not in favor of this proposal. And truthfully, I struggle with that in terms of seeing additional options that may be available. I recognize that this is a short-term solution. I also recognize that most innovative concepts often are perceived as outlandish when they're first presented and then turn out to be great. So as much as when this alternative was presented initially, I thought it to be a bit strange, but seeing in particular the way in which our directors have worked in collaboration to scale back portions of this to the least impacted area, that's been more attainable for me. I do want to understand, Councillor Grace, your points earlier were well taken, and the liability in terms of our responsibilities as councillors to the financial security of of this municipality. I'd like to better understand, and I'm not sure, Mr. Mayor, how to direct this question, but in terms of liability on other roadways and pathways that are used for multi-purpose, such as our concessions, how would that differ than this scenario whereby individuals are using the roadway as a multi-purpose?
I think that the Councillor Schreier put it well in that the municipality owns roads and people use them for all sorts of things. There are laws and bylaws controlling that, and we put up signs and we follow the Ontario Traffic Manual, and we do all sorts of things to ensure that we keep those roads in good repair and that we do the things we need to do to keep them safe. But we bear liability. I mean, we own them, people drive on them, we have a liability, and whatever happens, we'll still have a liability. I mean, make it a one-way road, we own the road. If somebody gets hurt on it, you better believe we'll be liable. And if it's two-way, somebody gets hurt, we can still be liable. So, I think that's not to take away from Councillor Grace's points. Obviously she researches that and everything extremely well, and so I certainly believe what she says and don't disagree with it. I would only say that liability is something we bear as a municipality, as the owner of roads. I don't know if either of the directors have anything to add to that. Anyway, I hope that clarifies it.
Yeah, that does help. I would like to just further comment that I didn't find the survey results to be particularly compelling one way or another. They were very not misleading, but they were very balanced in terms of the responses. I would finally like to comment to both the directors that if anything can be done, and I know I've expressed this in writing, but there are individuals routinely disregarding the barricades that are there now. And I understand it is not within our purview to enforce this, but I think we need to, in the short term, make it more permissible or impermissible to cross that barrier in some way. Additional signage or education needs to be given to the community to ensure that folks aren't continuing to use that in an unsafe manner. So if we could do that, that would be fantastic.
I would say, Councillor, that it is within our authority to enforce the closure of that trail, and we have bylaw enforcement and police, and we can do that, and probably ought to. Further comments from members. Councillor Carr.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess maybe just a few comments and a couple questions. Share a lot of the same concerns as the fellow councillors have stated tonight, so I'm not going to go back on those again. Myself, I have a hard time, I guess, accepting the fact that it's going to be a short-term closure. I definitely want to see some assurances there that this is going to be September 7th. We reopen that roadway if this was to go through as it is. I know many of our other projects don't seem to happen on time, so it's one of those things that I'd want some assurances put into place that we're going to see this back open on time once again if it does happen to go through. One of the other concerns I've got is I know the proposed two-way is only supposed to be for local residents that would be turning around at Hilly Lane. Hilly Lane, I think, is going to cause a huge issue there. That's single lane use. There's no room for a turnaround, so all of a sudden you're going to ask people to back out into traffic. Perfect example for a biker to get hit somewhere like that, or a vehicle coming out as people are backing into traffic and merging. That, in my opinion, would not be a safe alternative for them to be having a two-way to that point. With those concerns as well, I travel the Shore Road and the 10th concession multiple times every day. I definitely see a lot of heavy truck traffic that goes down through there and enters into the lower subdivisions that are under construction at this time, as well as the large boats that we have going in and out of our harbor. That's the way they come through town. I know the operator that runs one of the haulage companies, he cannot go down Market Street. He cannot make that turn because of lights and the widths, when that's going to come to an issue when it comes to launching boats. Because of COVID this year, we are behind. They're behind too. These boats are just starting to move and starting to come into our harbor. I know that's a short-term thing, but it is a concern. Is that going to be a liability? We're adding more of that heavy traffic to roads that aren't prepared for this type of equipment coming through. That's a big thing with me to consider this. I do support active transportation as well. I myself and the family, I use it multiple times a week. I don't want to see it closed, but unfortunately, I don't think I can support a one-way till I see our plan going forward. I need to see something, you know, and anytime I see costs associated with it, it's minimal cost. Well, minimal cost to me doesn't give me a dollar figure. I know I like to preach on the dollar figures a lot, but that's what I said I'd do. I don't know what we can do. Is it an option that we can just fill in those holes to make it as safe as possible so we don't have those big drop-offs off the side of the trail? As a few other councillors mentioned, people are on it. I see them every day. I drive that multiple times a day and people are walking by it. You know, we talk about liabilities. That's a huge one. How can we not get those filled in for the time being? That's a big thing. And then also too, I haven't seen anything. I know we have a long way to go. This might be directed more towards Amanda. Do we have a timeline when we're going to start repairs on this? Do we know how long it's going to be to repair this? Are we going to be closing the road while we're doing repairs? You know, that's, I think, a lot more information that I would be looking for before I could get behind and support this as well.
Do you have any answer to that, as Director of Infrastructure?
Sorry about that. The space bar worked earlier today, but it's not working tonight. I do have some answers to that. We haven't reached out to the heavy equipment companies, but North Shore Road isn't built any stronger than Market Street or any of our other streets. It's the same thickness of asphalt and road base. So it's not that it is specially designed to handle that traffic. The increased loads of those traffics would not cause more damage to Market Street, for instance. The plan going forward, I've been working with the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority on a permit to do some work to fill in those holes. They weren't supportive of my first design, so we're going back to something similar that Kincardine did, and I'm working with the consultant that did the work in Kincardine on their Goderich Street. The cost is quite high, so I'll be back with a cost for you guys to look at for that, but they and myself are meeting on site this week to walk through that, and so we can try to look at spot repairs versus a longer thing. It is not going to be a cheap project to get these trails back up. Like, it's millions of dollars. It's not tens of thousands of dollars for the long-term fix. So I want to do it right, do it once and do it right. These lake levels that we see now are higher than when the design was done in the 80s, and the wave action on that lake or on that road is different as well. So we need to get the proper professionals to take a look at that. So we're putting an RFP out shortly for that work to be done. Also hoping to work with Bruce Peninsula, Huron, Kinloss, Kincardine, and the Conservation Authority so that we can look at the shoreline all as one, hire one consultant and do a big study. That means that we will have recommendations in the spring for summer construction next year. So there may be road closures at that time. They may be intermittent. They may be done by construction lights. There's many options that we can look at when we get to the bigger project. This one here gives us that ability to make the roads safe for everybody for the summer months, while we would do the repair in the fall work anyway. And in the short term, that was your last question, I think, Councillor Carr, about can we put more barricades up, and that, yes, we'll meet again Jane and I will meet out on site with the operations and make sure that we can get some more barricades if we've got some concrete ones that we can put up and get around the areas that are in bad shape right now.
Important just to clarify too, that timeline, the spring approval and summer construction is contingent on council's approval of a budget line item to fund it. Is that's accurate? Yes.
Oh yes, absolutely. So trying to find where the funds for this will come from will be something that I bring forward in the fall with an estimate, and then move forward. So you may see options or at least an idea of something to do there in the fall so that we can talk about it, have money for it in the spring and summer.
Thank you. The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And one thing I guess we're finding out that North Shore Trail is a loved trail, and it was put back in 2009 when that trail was put in. We knew that it was going to be heavily used, and it is being heavily used. And what a great addition to our community. And you know, I've been involved with, as you know, lots of years with trail development, and I put trail safety, you know, at the top of my list. I must say that we live in a world of liability, and I think your comment earlier, Mr. Mayor, was that, you know, I think there's an incident on the shoreline trail on the road related incident with traffic. You know, we're probably going to be named one way or the other. And you know, a message I'd like to send out to our drivers in our community, and Jane has been promoting Share the Road campaign and Lisa Billings for a long time now, and I think Share the Road is a wonderful initiative that we should be, you know, heavily promoting. Is Share the Road. For Pete's sake, slow down and respect the fact that there are rollerbladers and cyclists and walkers, you know, not only on the trail but on the road. And I think we need to continue to work hard on that. 2 weeks ago, this is Amanda and Jane, I took the liberty of driving down to the town of Goderich. And I really encourage Amanda and Jane to take a drive down sometime. It's $1.4 million they spent on over a mile of beach, washed out their trail completely. It was quite a sight, and they went directly to an engineer, and got approved Conservation Authority, of course, but went directly to an engineer and started a year ago, and now they're complete. And so I hope that we can move forward as quickly as the whole community hopes, so we can move forward as quickly as we can to get our trail repaired so we can go back to usage. I love the 30-kilometer. I think reducing the speed to 30 kilometers per hour is a smart idea. I have utmost respect for Councillor Grace and the risk and liability. She researches things so well, and you know, there are certainly risks that are inherited risks. People use that shoreline trail and roadway. It's a busy road, but you know, the thing with me, and you said it, Mr. Mayor, a few weeks ago, people have adjusted, I think, to sharing. I mean, years ago, before the trail was put in, people shared the road, and there was respect for cyclists and runners and walkers. And I just think we really need to go back to that as a community. If we've lost any of that, then we need to try and rebuild that respect for cyclists on the road. No one likes to see incidents, accidents happening, and they say to drivers, see a cyclist on the road, for Pete's sake, slow down. If I was a resident on the shoreline, I wouldn't want to see a one-lane road. This was a tough decision for me. I'm a big trail supporter, and safety is of utmost importance to me, but I can't support a one-lane road. I'm not going to tonight. I've labored over it. I know there are people going to be upset with that decision, that my vote and all of our votes, if you're one way or the other, you're going to be popular or not popular, but that's the role of a council member. You do your research, make informed decisions, and I've spoke to a fair number of people on the Shore Road, and I just don't think it's the right thing to do. And I want to compliment Jane and Amanda. They did a whole lot of work on this, and what they said in a lot of respects made a lot of sense. But I come back to people share the road. I drive that road, Mr. Mayor, almost daily. I'm retired, you know, so we can get out and get in our cars and drive a bit. I probably drive it every other day, daytime, mornings, afternoons, evenings, and I'm seeing a lot. I am seeing some when the section of trail that's damaged, people are making do. I see it. They're just making do, and so being respectful of one another, but to the drivers, let's show a little more respect again. So I I won't be supporting the one lane. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I think we've had lots of good discussion, and we've heard from Councillor Carr has one more. Councillor Carr.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, my the lighting's bad in here now. I guess this question's directed towards Jane. Jane, if this did happen to go through here and come to council, is it something that you can guarantee us that this trail will, or the one way would go away on September 7th?
It's certainly our intention only to provide this trail during the summer months when we know the students are out of school, when we know young children are on their bikes, on their training wheels, people are walking in the summer months. It is only for this summer until Labor Day weekend, and at such time we would revert it back to a two-way road.
So
Okay.
sorry, thank you. That does mean that that's a guarantee to us here right now that would be reopened on the 7th if this goes through.
Thanks, staff has reported that it will go till the 7th of September. And so that is a commitment as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
To you, Mr.
Yep.
Mayor. Yeah, the traffic bylaw recommendation can be written such that the one way on North Shore Road be until September 7th, 2020. So that would make it guaranteed because the bylaw says so.
There you go. Councillor Maya.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I would like to ask that the clerk conduct a roll call vote on this.
Sure. I have a couple of comments I'm going to make before we call the vote. First, I want to say that it's difficult to bring creative and different and out of the box ideas forward. I remember vividly the bump outs in Southampton and painting the blue lines on the road, and that was controversial. We had staff who brought it forward, a council who decided to do that. It was a creative thing. It wasn't super popular, and that's fine, but we tried it, and I want to just encourage staff to keep bringing forward out of the box ideas to try to solve problems across the community. Whether they pass or fail at council is not a reflection on those ideas or on your work. It's important that we hear creative things like this. And I wanted to preface my statement with that because I will not be supporting the recommendation. The reason for me is I was a supporter of building the North Shore Trail. That trail cost just a little over $1 million 11 years ago. It was funded with $750,000 in federal money, federal and provincial money. So the town spent $250,000 effectively building the North Shore Trail 10 years ago. The fix for this is going to be very expensive, and it's all going to come from the town. And we're going to have to make a decision on that next year. I think it is optimistic at this stage to say that the North Shore Trail will be up and running next summer. And for that reason, we need a more permanent solution than this. Solution until September 7th doesn't cut it. We need something that's going to be permanent because this could go on a while. And I don't take any joy in that. I wish the trail was up and running right now. But we had a lot. We just heard a report a minute ago for an $8 million baseball facility. We got a rec center we want to build. We're going to have a heck of a lot of infrastructure projects in addition to this, ones that are critical: water, sewer, to deliver critical services to members of this community. And we're going to have to make decisions on that for 2021. And we're going to have to parse that down and figure out how to fund it. And I can tell you, when this comes forward, it's going to be tough to figure out how to fund. So there's no guarantee that this gets through council for 2021. And there is every likelihood that we have to have a more permanent, more long-term solution on the North Shore Road to get cyclers up there. Parts of that trail are still serviceable. The parts that are above the ridge along the road are still fine and could be used. There's an alternative to share the road there, and we should see it. We should get it up and running, and we should be prepared then to run it until we can fix the trail. And frankly, the trail may not look like it looks right now when it is fixed, because clearly that design didn't stand the test of time. Couldn't withstand the environment. And so whatever we build this time for a lot of money, better darn well stand the test of time. because it's going to come at a very high price to the taxpayers of Saugeen Shores. I am absolutely committed to reconstructing that trail, but it may take time and it may be different. And until that time, we need to share the road solution that is going to last until we get it fixed. So, and also I just want to point out too, you know, when you make a road a one-way street, most one-way streets are on grid pattern streets in downtown core areas or wherever, right? And you go one way, you go a block, you turn left again, you turn left again, turn left one more time, and you're back home. It takes about 3 seconds, right? But if you're on the North Shore Road and you're going one way and you want to get back home, you got to go like 10 miles all the way back, all the way around. It'll take a long time. That's a pretty significant. It's not just a minor inconvenience to those people who live on that road. It's a significant inconvenience that we would be imposing. And I think we have other options than imposing that solution, imposing that inconvenience on them, the ones that have worked in the past and will work again in the future. And so those are my comments. I'm looking forward to the recorded vote. And why don't we, Linda, call the vote?
Thank you. So you've heard the motion. So if you're in favor, please say yes. If you're opposed, please say no. Mayor Charbonneau?
No.
Councillor Carr?
No.
Councillor Grace?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Matheson?
Yes.
Vice Deputy Mayor Myatt?
No.
Councillor Myatt?
No.
Councillor Rich?
Yes.
Councillor Schreider?
No.
Councillor Smith?
No.
That motion is defeated.
Thank you. So that moves us then on to, we'll just finish up community services, Parks and Recreation with the staff report on the John Kyles Parkette designation and the director.
Thank you. John Kyles was a long time and leading member of the Saugeen Shores Beachers Association, having served 2 terms as president for both the Saugeen Beachers Association and Probus Club. As a lifelong seasonal resident and then permanent resident of Gobles Grove, Mr. Kyles played a pinnacle role in the establishment of the gardens at the Gobles Grove washroom facility and the development of the parkette located at the corner of Saugeen Beach Road and Bruce Road 25. Staff is recommending that the parkette at Gobles Grove be named the John Kyles Parkette. The recommendation is in keeping with the public facilities naming policy, and staff will work with members of the Saugeen Beachers Association and his family to position benches and signage that depicts a welcoming retreat for users.
Thank you. I have a recommendation that council approve naming the parkette at the corner of the Saugeen Beach Road and Bruce Road 25, the John Kyles Parkette. Comments from members. Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Jane, thank you so much for your report, and a good friend to John Kyles, as many of us were around the council table. And John did so much for our community, and he promoted so many good ideas for Gobles Grove and along our waterfront, and he sure is missed. I miss him a lot, and just a real good guy and great guy. And I want to thank Greg Schmaltz. Greg certainly was one of the movers to bring this idea forward to Mayor Charbonneau and myself, and you know, the mayor and I are both so supportive. So Jane, I just want to thank you for the report, and I'm pleased to hear that you're going to be reaching out to the Port Algon Saugeen Beachers Association, because I know they have some good ideas. So thanks again for your report, Jane.
Thank you. Further comments from members? I don't see any. I'm obviously supportive of the recommendation, but also looking forward to the broader report that's promised at the end of the report about the parkette and the whole project. And it says it will be provided at a later date. Can we just get some sense of how far off we're talking for getting that report? Are we maybe Amanda's there, or you could provide us some information about when it might be coming?
Yeah, I'll let Amanda respond to that question, as that will be her report that'll be coming forward.
Sure. Are you still on the line there? Oh, there she is.
Sorry, I just missed that. I was trying to bring my agenda back up. We're talking about the planning report for the recreation facility, right?
No, I'm looking for, I just would like to know at the end of Jane's report about the parquet,
Sorry.
it suggests that we'll be getting a report at a later date. I just wonder if we have some sense of the timeline is on that parquet report.
So we have the survey being done now by our staff and the grading design by the summer student. So then the landscaping design is going to start within the month. And so in the fall for budget deliberations, we'll come back with what that proposal was for the landscaping piece on that. In the meantime, I can bring an information report that shows that if you want that separate compared to the budget one.
And will we be getting, maybe Councillor Carr can answer, will we be getting a report from our committee at that time at the budget, or is the work of the committee still ongoing?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The last email that I've got in regards to that was on the 19th of this month, actually. I just received an email with some updates on the preliminary drawings on it, as well as the preferred alternative and some other stuff. With it, I don't see, I'm just looking at it again now, I don't see a date that we're going to be bringing this one back forward, but it's something definitely I can get on and bring it back next council, I'm sure, with something. You
don't have to put that kind of timeline on it. Just be interested to know when you expect your work to be completed. Perhaps you can let council know when you at your convenience.
Yep.
Okay. So there's nothing further. You've heard this recommendation. I'll ask all in favor. That's carried. All right. So now we'll head back up to the top of the agenda and begin with the general government report and staff report on the Southampton Arts Centre agreement and the Southampton Visitor Centre and the Director of Strategic Initiatives.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As publicly funded tourism services transition from the Chamber of Commerce to the town of Saugeen Shores, the operations of the Southampton Visitor Centre are now the responsibility of the town. After meeting with the Southampton Arts Centre to understand the Visitor Centre space, the Arts Centre has proposed their organization could staff the space and ensure visitors receive a warm welcome into Southampton. Additionally, the Arts Centre has welcomed conversation with Marine Heritage Society to understand how the summer staff for the Visitor Centre could also supplement their organization, as the Marine Heritage operations and plans for 2020 have drastically changed as a result of COVID-19. This report includes a recommendation to enter into an agreement with the Arts Centre for the remainder of 2020 at a cost of $14,000, which will be funded through the tourism service budget. And just as a reminder to Council, the Chamber received less funding in 2020 to deliver tourism services, and that difference in the dollars that provided the town staff with a budget line of $50,000 to execute tourism services. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Sure, I'll read the recommendation, then we can take questions or comments. It's recommended that council pass a bylaw to authorize a 5-month agreement with the Southampton Arts Centre to operate the Southampton Visitor Centre. Questions or comments from members of the committee? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, there's specific mention in the agreement with the Southampton Arts School in terms of hours of operation for the Tourism Information Center. Can you confirm that the same hours of operation will be, consistent with the Port Elgin Information Center as run by the Saugeen Shores Chamber of Commerce?
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the question. So we have a meeting set up between the Chamber of Commerce, who's representing, of course, the Port Elgin Visitor Center, and Alison Billings, who's the director at the Arts Center, and myself. We do know that it is important to standardize that service, including the hours of operation. So we have that conversation lined up, and I can confirm back with council what those hours will be, but I'd like to have that conversation with both parties first.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. That's great, Jessica. And through you, Mr. Mayor, I would just like to confirm that they would also be sharing resources in terms of any training that may exist. I know as a student, I myself worked at the Tourist Information Center, and I would hope that in those days we shared responsibilities between the two offices. So you'd see familiar faces. People were, shifting between the two offices. So I hope that the information that's shared in terms of training would be consistent as well.
Through Mr. Mayor, if I could just add to that, absolutely, that's on our radar. And the tourism staff students have also attended some municipal staff summer training, seasonal student training, and that's been well received. So again, we'll ensure that standardization's in place In addition to COVID modifications and signage relating to physical distancing, the COVID modifications to the service will be considered to ensure, again, that similar service between both locations.
Okay, Councillor Rich.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a great solution. I'll just give you a little insight in the Southampton BIA. We've been working on getting some information kiosks, and the hope was to have them in place by July 1st. There's been a real issue with supply management, as I think most industries are seeing. And the last report I heard, which was the end of last week, the kiosks are still in India. So that's probably not going to happen for July 1st. So I think this is a great solution. I think that a lot of the business owners in the Southampton core were dissatisfied with the level of service that they received through the information center in previous years. This is an effective cost way to do that. And I think that's going to be a better service for the people of Southampton, and exactly what we need to take us until we can get over to a more computerized model like those kiosks.
Thank you. Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Jessica, really creative. And I think it's what a great way to help Southampton arts, our arts community in general. And you know, by throwing some dollars their way and helping with their operation and helping us at the same time is very creative. And so congratulate you for that and your staff. I see in the report the Marine Heritage Society mentioned 2 or 3 times. I think that's also a great thing for you know, for this new partnership opportunity. And just explain to me again, like Marine Heritage Society, why their name's being mentioned 2 or 3 times, how they're going to benefit. Could you just explain that briefly, Jessica?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly. So as I mentioned, Allison Billings with the Arts Center has been fantastic to work with and very creative individual as well. And through conversations, recognizing the significant impact that Marine Heritage Society will be experiencing because of COVID, the conversation evolved into, you know, these are the groups we really need to take care of and we need to support. And that relationship between the Art Center and Marine Heritage conversation has continued. What I'm hearing right now from the Southampton Art Center is that Marine Heritage Society would like to continue some work, with some promotion work, some research for their group. And the Art Center is suggesting that those students that they'll be bringing in to help with the Visitor Center may have some time that they can support Marine Heritage. So the relationship really is beneficial to all parties. And Marine Heritage is grateful for that. I won't speak for them, but I know that that opportunity is unique for them. And the partnership between all 3 parties is very positive.
Great, Jessica. It's really nice you were able to tie in Marine Heritage Society, a wonderful organization in Southampton. And so thanks for your report. Good initiative.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments? I don't see any, so I'll ask all in favor of the recommendation. That's carried. Okay, so that moves us then on to economic recovery, the staff report on economic recovery strategy, and the Director of Strategic Initiatives.
Great, thank you very much. In collaboration with the Mayor's Task Force on Economic Recovery and through many conversations with our peers in the economic development industry, our team is asking Council to receive version 1 of the Saugeen Shores Strong Economic Recovery Strategy. As mentioned in the report, Council can expect staff reports to follow, which connect to this strategy. Receiving the document is not a blanket approval to implement all tactics. This strategy is a living document, and version 2 will reflect priority setting and other potential updates. Again, drafted in partnership with the Mayor's Task Force. Members of the task force have provided insight into actions deemed relevant to support recovery. Any solid strategy includes research, action, implementation, and evaluation. As you can see in the document, our team has thoughtfully addressed areas of focus, and we've shared suggestions on how we can support recovery. Again, this document is not set in stone. It is a document which will evolve over time and with experience. As research continues, staff will continue to stay connected and informed with our peers in the industry. through our networks, and we will rely on the Mayor's task force for their continued support. Providing this document is received by Council, staff will post the economic recovery strategy on our website and plan to share more broadly our plans for implementation. So with that, I will answer any questions.
Questions or comments? The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you again for your report, Jessica, and thank you to staff for the speed in which this first report was brought to Council. It was very quick, and we all, in my mind, we all need to appreciate that speed in which it was done. It was on page 13, and I think we just talked about today, but we talked about pursuing the development of employment land on the 10th concession, and I believe that should read concession 6, correct, Jessica?
Yep, that's correct.
So that change will be made, obviously. I'm just wondering, to do with that, I think it is timely with COVID-19 and rolling out the potentially new business being set up, et cetera, and so on and so forth. The requests for proposals that were sent out for the new business park, did we receive bids from the request for proposal for the new park out there? And secondly, I think that process was stopped when COVID-19 came along. When do you see that restarting again, Jessica? That's the first question. Well, I'll ask that question first, and I have a couple more questions.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So that is correct, and I apologize for that typo, and we have since updated the document, but of course, the version we're looking at the agenda package has that error. I will answer your question. I do want to note there's a light bulb beside that particular action, and that light bulb indicates that this conversation happened with the Mayor's task force. And the concept of securing land and getting it ready for development and getting that land ready for businesses to expand or new businesses to join us in Saugeen Shores, that conversation came up multiple times through the task force. So it's written in here, certainly as we heard from local experts, that this is very important to do. And it certainly was on our work plan prior to COVID and is returning on our work plans. We did check in with procurement today, and we do need to reopen that RFP for a 2-week window to ensure that we're delivering the procurement policy that is in place to make sure that it is posted. So we've given procurement the go ahead and asked them to please open that posting. So we will see that reopened, and we will be advancing this project, and it will be the Economic Development Officer, Heather Hyde, who will be managing this project.
Great, Jessica. I'm sorry, maybe I missed it. Were there bids? Did we receive 1 or 2, did you say?
I believe we did receive a couple. I have not had a conversation myself with procurement, but certainly when we're ready to come back to council, we'll bring that information.
Thanks, Jessica. On page 5, we talk about in the bottom right-hand corner, page 5, talk about additional research will continue to occur, not limited data analysis, survey, results overview. Will there be a cost to that segment, or is this all being done internally, that part as well?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this section will be done internally. What we're saying with this section is that we know that there's data still to come. A good example is the federal government has suggested they'll be releasing some data on the CERB benefit that's been out, the emergency response benefit, and that data is not out yet. But when it is out, it's important for us to take a look at that and see where our community is sitting. So that's an example, but there will be no cost to this additional research, and it will be staff that will be reviewing that and taking note.
Thanks, Jessica. And on page 10, you talk about review of economic development recovery plans from neighboring counties and municipalities, and I think it's never a bad thing to reach out to other municipalities. So thank you for that. On page 12, is this where the pavement hits the road in terms of cost? And that's we talk about local regional billboards, the new community profile booklet next year, the whole targeted audience. With is that where? I mean, do you have a handle yet on what potentially we could be spending on this next leg of this economic recovery plan?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, we do have some costs in mind. Right now, those examples within the marketing and promotion section, those are things that would come out of our annual operation budget for economic development. We're not anticipating great spends from these categories, but certainly the financial impact is being tracked by staff to ensure that the tactics built in here are responsible and achievable.
Okay. And just the last thing, Mr. Mayor, is that it's on page 17, but it speaks to the research surveying. There's a second leg. Jessica, you think there'll be a second survey happening? And I guess around performance measurement, and I think Councillor Grayson attended that session a few months back. Is your plan to measure all of this data in some way, shape, or form? Can you just explain how this whole process is going to be measured?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for that question. And we wrote this section in identifying that evaluation, your plan's only as good as what you can come back and say worked, or what your outputs were and what your outcomes were. And through the model that OMAFRA has with their performance measurement program, this is where Heather and I will be taking a really close look at the tactics, the plan overall, but then each tactic as well, and considering the activities and the inputs. And then what did we get? What is the output? What are the outcomes? So this page 17, when we speak about evaluation, this is our way of recognizing that it will be done. And right now, I think it will be, I'm comfortable to say we'll be doing that broad look at the entire recovery strategy and coming back with some metrics and some indicators. And depending on each tactic, if there is potential financial impact, that could be high. If there's a tactic that might feel a little bit more of a risk, those will be tactics that we will be specifically measuring for sure. And some other items we may just do because we do them anyways. And a good example of that is the community profile. We update our profile annually. It provides great insight into potential investors. For businesses that might be looking to expand, it provides annual data. And that's something we do anyways. So we may not measure something like that, but certainly if there's a municipal pivoting piece, like the patio example, Heather and Jay have been working hard on the sidewalk, cafe, and patio policy revisions. That's worth tracking and getting the numbers of how many businesses took advantage of that opportunity and what was the impact to the town. So I hope that answers your question. But
it was well articulated. Mr. Mayor, just to ask you a quick question. How have your first two meetings gone? Are you pleased with the feedback, the input, what you're hearing from businesses? Are you so far so good? Can you bring us up to date a little bit how things are going? Can we do that now just for 1 sec?
Well, yeah, it's gone very well. I think council selected a strong group of people with lots of excellent experience. Some folks who've actually, interestingly enough, been through economic downturns in our community before. And led the community through those downturns and have excellent insights into how that was done and can deliver lots of insight into both the business community, municipal government, the general public. So I think we're getting, and you can see, I mean, every one of those bullet points in there with a light bulb next to it is something that came directly from the task force. You can see some of the value that they've already delivered in helping to augment what staff has been working on here and improve it. And as we go forward, we're going to get into more detail with the task force on some of this stuff, some of their ideas, some of staff's ideas, and deliver back to council, I think, some very solid recommendations to actually help some people in the community with our resources and through our policy. So I feel very good about it.
Okay, thanks for that update. Appreciate it.
Yep. Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Jessica. I guess I just wanted to say thank you to, just like Mike did on the speed that this was brought back to us. Definitely appreciate it. I know myself being in the business community, that the sooner we can make this stuff happen, it's definitely the better for everybody. So I don't say it very often, but I just want to make sure that I say that that's appreciated, and I think it hopefully will be by council as a whole, and hopefully we see this momentum carry forward with this project. I know we had some hurdles there at the start, but hopefully we've hit the ground here running, and this is nothing but good news from here on out, how we're going to make Saugeen Shores the #1 growing community still through all this. Thanks again, Jessica.
Thank you, Councillor.
Let's go Councillor Mayette, then I'll get Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I also would like to say it's an excellent product that's been produced. The one question that came to mind through this, and it refers to the businesses that have actually and I'll use the term pivot because I see that used throughout the discussion and in the document, the businesses that have been able to pivot their business models and actually either survive or even in some cases thrive throughout this pandemic in the last few months. Have you received any stories, and do you have any strategies for helping companies that have not been able to do that, or maybe the lessons learned from the ones that have? Because let's face it, there are businesses that have become really busy on account of this. Anybody who's in the providing of healthcare services or equipment is extremely busy. Anybody who's in the courier business, if you're a FedEx or a Purolator driver or even Canada Post, they're extremely busy. The one driver told me it's like Christmas on steroids, like the amount of online shopping and so any business that are considering going to a virtual platform, those seems to be where the opportunities are for the new economy. And we like to see our small businesses. I too am a small business owner. We like to see them survive through this, but also see them survive in what is going to be the new economy. So just a comment, that's all.
Yeah, no, thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, I would just like to congratulate all the participants. I know it has been stated, but I had the privilege of participating on this committee with the Deputy Mayor and yourself, Mr. Mayor, and a number of other qualified, educated, and very resourceful and innovative thinkers who brought some excellent contributions to the committee and to this report as a whole. Jessica, one of the comments you made earlier really struck me, and I hope that it's something we continue to see, not just in this portfolio, but going forward. I sort of live and breathe by this methodology that what gets measured gets done. And you've mentioned in not so certain terms, but you've alluded to key performance indicators, or what I would call KPIs. And I cannot wait for the day until we can have that at our fingertips, and a red, yellow, green indicator that we as elected officials can look to on a recurring frequency to see the health of not only our economy, but also our projects. So if this leads the way, if this initiative leads the way for those key performance indicators, I know many people around this table will be so happy to have that information at our fingertips. So thank you for that. I do want to give a special recognition to Cheryl, who was a facilitator, who acted as a facilitator for this, and what could have been deemed a somewhat intimidating crowd. We had a number of people who may never have participated in a committee before, but were brought forward for their expertise in this area. And I thank them for their contributions and for stepping out of what could be their comfort zone to provide us with this insight. And Cheryl did a great job of bringing those things to fruition. And I would be remiss if I didn't sort of tack onto a point that Councillor Mayette just made in terms of online shopping. And Councillor Carr, you and I will continue to hammer home this message that we as a community and community members have a significant role to play in the recovery of the economy in Saugeen Shores. And that includes shopping locally, and when and if the opportunity presents itself to use e-commerce to shop locally, that's fantastic. But if not, there are businesses who are open in safe ways and working hard to provide products for our community. So I hope that all those listening continue to support our local businesses.
Great, thank you. Further comments or questions? I don't see any. I just will reiterate what's been said about thanking Jess and Heather for advancing this so quickly. They have been working on this behind the scenes for some time, frankly, knowing that we needed a plan. And they are the Department of Strategic Initiatives, and their strategic thinking was such that we needed to have a plan, and they've been working on it, and we needed it, and they've delivered it. So we appreciate that very much. And now we need to draw things out of here and execute them. Anybody who's watching should stay tuned for regular council, because there's an initiative on that agenda for something that we can do right now to help out small businesses in our community. And so we are going to this council will be taking action with the help of our administration to implement this strategy and get some programming on the ground that's actually going to help some businesses and not just business, but the whole community to recover. So thank you very much. And I will read the recommendation. I was remiss and didn't do that at the beginning. It's recommended that council receive the Saugeen Shores Strong Economic Recovery Strategy developed in partnership with the Mayor's Task Force on Economic Recovery. If there's no further discussion, I'll ask all in favor. That's carried. Thank you. So that moves us then onto infrastructure and development. And the first one is a staff report on the traffic bylaw update and the Director of Infrastructure and Development.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. The traffic bylaw update needs to be updated for 2 items. The first I'll speak to is about new development subdivisions. The new stop signs need to be added in to allow for enforcement of those stop signs. The second one is for speed reduction on 3 roads: Saugeen Beach Road, North Shore Road, and Miramichi Bay. All of them are due to the high lake levels and erosion and safety concerns in those areas. Through my review of the draft transportation master plan, a reduction of 30 kilometers an hour in these sorts of areas is supported by our transportation consultant, and therefore I look to council's recommendation to do those 2 changes to the traffic bylaw. When it comes to council, it will not have anything in it about the one-way section on North Shore that is mentioned in the staff report.
Okay, thank you. It's recommended that council pass a bylaw to authorize an amendment to the traffic bylaw 103/2008. Questions or comments from members of the committee? Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, I'm going to be supporting this bylaw. I think the speed reductions and the stop signs are warranted. I've done a little bit of traveling around and looked at these intersections and areas. I would just ask that when we're making the change, putting a stop sign where there previously wasn't a stop sign, or changing the speed limit on a road that people maybe aren't used to seeing, that we add the new circle with the highlights around it, so that people know that it's new, that we don't just pop them in there and hope people notice, because we are creatures of habit. So just want to make sure that gets included. I'm not sure that it always is, but it's a good idea.
Thank you. Okay. The Highway Traffic Act and the Ontario Traffic Manual. So absolutely, you'll see that.
Good, thank you. The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think just to agree with the 40 to 30 kilometer speed limit on those 2 roads, it's a good move. And Amanda, I just wanted to congratulate you for having a street named after yourself. I think that's really nice.
Yeah, I thought that was part of the recommendation, but I guess not.
Thank you. And through you, it's actually the developer's oldest daughter.
Oh, there you go. Further questions or comments to the recommendation? I don't see any, so all in favor? That's carried. All right, so that moves us then on to the next one, which is a staff report on the parking bylaw update and the director.
Sure, thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor. Joseph Street changes to align with the project where we put in the pedestrian crossover. So currently the parking bylaw restricts parking within that area, but only during the school year. So this will make it enforceable through the full year. Waterloo and Bricker, this is to open up parking in the downtown area to encourage people to stop and stay, give them spaces downtown. The pavement width on both of the streets will allow for the proposed changes. Saugeen Beach Road is because of the erosion and where the water level and the road are meeting, we need to remove the parking there to give what we can of beach and make that corner from Bruce Road 25 safe. Chantry View and Lambert Lane are from projects that had been reconstructed. Lambert Lane, we have had many discussions about the parking on that one. This will enable that boulevard parking that we talked about last year to be legal on that west side. And Chantry View has the same thing where on the south side of Chantry View we'll have boulevard parking, which came out of recommendations from those projects.
Okay, it's recommended the council pass a bylaw to authorize an amendment to the parking bylaw 51/2013. Are there questions or comments from members? Councillor Grace.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Amanda. Will the property owners on these affected areas will they be notified specifically about these bylaw amendments?
Through you, and thank you for that question. Yes, that we are proposing to do a news release, social media posting, as well as doing a direct mail to the people within the areas so that they will recognize what the change is in front of them.
Okay, Councilor Schreider.
Thank you, and through you. Thanks, Amanda. I had, excuse me, a question on your previous report as well, but the two of them tie in nicely. I see here with the Joseph Street and some of the parking in this parking concerns in and around with Northport School. I know that Bruce Street in that area as well has been one that's identified from Market Street heading south or heading north, I'm sorry, with some concern with speed and construction vehicles and things like that. It has been one that I know you and I have talked about, and it's been brought up a few times. I know that there's the transportation master plan that's coming our way. Your previous report talked a little bit about adding stop signs and reducing the speed. Is that something that could be looked at for that area along Bruce Street from Market Street and heading north?
Thank you, and through you. So the street signs in the traffic bylaw already exist. This is just acknowledging that they do exist in the traffic bylaw. They are installed in the new developments. So for Bruce and Joseph specifically, the transportation consultant is doing a safety assessment on that intersection. There's a few that were identified, and that's one. So they're looking at whether it's a crossing guard, speed bumps, stop signs, and that report will come this summer back on that intersection. These were ones that were easy to do, and at the same time as the speed limit and the stop signs, I thought I would put the Joseph Street one in as school is ending.
Perfect. And just one follow-up comment, and I appreciate that, Amanda, and I think that's important for the residents around there to hear that as well. I also did reach out to the police chief because they did know the limit campaign, and they had a lot of speeding enforcements and tickets that were issued. So he's also digging up exactly where some of those hot spots were. He's aware of that issue along that stretch of road as well. So I just appreciate you guys looking into that. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further comments from members? For myself, man, I appreciate the communications plan and your plan to get out to the public and hear from the affected people and come back to us in July 13th. I think that's, I'm glad you had that plan today and are ready to execute that. That's good. There is one thing though, that I kind of would like anybody's thoughts on whether we should try to advance more rapidly, and that's the Saugeen Beach Road question. I was there, I went by there last night. There's some pictures on social media as well of vehicles parked, backed up into the lake, basically, with people on tailgates and stuff. And knows I drove down there, trucks with their front ends hanging out over what's already a very narrow road. It's dangerous. I don't think there could be any debate or ought to be any debate from the public that should be no parking right now. It has to be because there's no room to park. I mean, it isn't even an option. It has to be no parking. So I would like to see us try to advance that. And if parking is permitted there as of right now, I think council should take action swiftly to prohibit parking in that section of Saugeen Beach Road, at least on a temporary basis until the lake recedes. But I don't know, is there an option to advance that more quickly, Amanda?
I'm going to reach out to Linda and ask if she can help through you, Mr. Mayor. I would see that it would just take updating the bylaw twice in 1 year, or I'm not sure if through the emergency management anything, there's a different way to do that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I may suggest that we could add it to tomorrow night's agenda, as it is somewhat of an emergency. So if you so wish, I could add it to the special agenda for tomorrow night.
Okay, I don't know what other members think. Maybe I'm the only one who's of that view, but it just seems to me that we're coming into a busy time. Lots of people are going to want to use that beach, and I think parking we ought to take swift action and prohibit parking there. But I'm open to what everybody else thinks. The Deputy Mayor.
You're probably going to be mad at me for saying this, Mr. Mayor, but one option, because of the construction on the county road coming down to there, the shortness of the beach and the smallness of the road, make it a one-way. That'll help alleviate a lot of the traffic, because if you have two vehicles coming on, you have the cars parking, there is absolutely no room. But if you make it one way because of the construction, you're only supposed to be going up that road one way anyways, you're going around and it completes the loop.
I could never be mad at you, Donnie. The only thing I would say is we have a parking bylaw in front of us here, and parking is what we're talking about, and we could take action on it. But I don't know what others think. The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, if I could ask the clerk this question, would it be permissible for a member of council, I would do it tonight, to place a motion on the floor to direct staff to immediately install posts and signage along Saugeen Shores Beach prohibiting parking? Can I put that on the floor this evening as a motion to move to advance this as quickly as possible? Is that permissible or not?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is somewhat out of order because it is to come through as a bylaw, so that there is some enforcement measures to it. So I would recommend against that option.
Okay, I mean, I would be prepared to put the motion on the floor, but if it's not kosher, well, then I won't do it or can't do it. So
is it possible to get the bylaw? Linda, you're suggesting it would be possible to get an amended bylaw to vote on by tomorrow?
That is correct. That's what I'm suggesting. I would suggest that we put it on the council meeting following this committee of whole, but it's not possible to write the bylaw in that shorter time, but tomorrow night would be feasible.
So unless I see some objection, why don't we proceed with that? I don't see anybody object to that. You'll have the opportunity to discuss it again tomorrow. Okay. Is that okay with you, the director? To the director? Yes. Okay. Thank you for that. Okay. Is there any other discussion on the recommendation here? I don't see any, so I'll ask all in favor. That's carried. So that then moves us on to the third report, staff report on development charges, deferral of collection fees, and the director.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, this is one of the COVID recovery concepts for our local businesses. That would be our home builders. This would allow the builders to access cash while they are building the homes, with the requirement to pay the development charges before occupancy. The process would be that they fill out an application, they get approval to defer the fees, and then Jay would be the one to follow up to make sure that the fees are going to be collected by the building department at the end.
Thank you. Then there is a recommendation, and it is that council authorize a CAO or designate to defer the collection of development charges until the occupancy of any residential or non-residential unit or structure subject to an acknowledgement provided by the person applying for a building permit, and that the authority to defer development charges shall be given until December 31st, 2020. Questions or comments from members of the committee? I think this is, and I was remiss in not mentioning the first time, this is we have two things on the agenda this evening that are economic recovery initiatives delivered by our staff swiftly and in an effort to aid the business community now. And so I just want to say thanks very much for that. I see Jay Posner just joined us on the line there too. So Jay, do you have anything to add to the report?
No, I think I wrote it well and it was straightforward.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I appreciate your work. Is there if there's nothing further from members of council, then I'll ask all in favor of the recommendation. Thank you very much. You're all right. So that moves us then on to the final infrastructure and development report, a staff report on subdivision agreement with Southampton Landing subdivision and the director.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, this is a subdivision agreement that would allow the first phase of the subdivision to move forward, giving us 6 single-family homes on McNabb Street. Phase 2 will include stormwater management and parkland. This subdivision agreement goes in conjunction with the construction of McNabb Street, and the cost sharing is spelled out in this agreement as well.
Okay, Thank you. It's recommended that council pass a bylaw to authorize the subdivision agreement with Castle Village Developments and Seton Southampton Limited for phase 1 of the Southampton Landing subdivision. Questions or comments from members of the committee? We'll start with the deputy mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. I understand development. I don't like the size of the lots. They're pretty small for fitting 6 into that little bit. But Amanda, can you ensure me that the houses, when they are built, because that is swamp, that their drainage will be taking somewhere other than going into the creek behind? Because most of the houses built on that area, they have their sumps that drain into the creek and behind.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there is an approved grading plan for the subdivision that was done and reviewed by engineering staff to ensure proper drainage to engineering standards.
Thank you. Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And my question just relates to parkland dedication. I know we will be negotiating parkland green space in phase 2. Amanda's mentioned that. I just have 2 questions about that. There is a parkland deficiency in that area. I know we have Rotary Perkins Park across busy highway. But it'd be nice to see some green space in that area. And I don't know whether it is Amanda or Jay, but who will be negotiating phase 2 for parkland dedication? And may I assume that we'll be taking land for this one in the form of parkland green space and not environmental hazard prop? I don't know how much is in there, if any, but will we be negotiating green space, Jay, Amanda, in phase 2?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the draft plan for phase 2 has already been approved, so it will be in line with that draft plan.
You just mentioned that we'll be obtaining green space parkland dedication as part of phase 2. Are you saying that that's already completed, the negotiation for the land? We know what land we're getting now? Is that what you're saying?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the draft plan shows the park land itself. Yes, we will not receive that till phase 2. I'm not sure, Jay, is there anything in the agreement specific to cash in lieu that I should speak to that I'm not mentioning?
No, this is a very old subdivision that was redesigned in the late, 2006-07, just before I started. And the block of land was identified at that time. It's a very large block. Some of it is hazard, but about 4 to, I don't know if my units are right, 4 to 6 hectares or 4 to 6 acres is actually not hazardous.
It's not hazardous that we'll be looking at as parkland. I mean, the 6 lots is the very same piece of property that was negotiated back in 2007-08, the Camelot Estates. For parklands. So it was removed in favor of housing, which is fine. I just wanted to be sure that we are receiving green space, not cash.
If I can be permitted, the block itself extends from Peel and to the creek, and that's the biggest green space area. So I think it's showing, you can sort of see it on the map. If I can, it would be the area.
So Jay, we're not, I don't mean to prolong this, but we're not taking, for parkland dedication phase 2, we're not taking environmental hazard property for our green space. Is that fair?
That's fair. Yes, we've defined the hazard boundaries, and there's land outside the hazard that is parkland.
Okay, thanks for that.
Okay, thank you. Anything further on this recommendation? I don't see anything, so all in favor? That's carried. Okay, so that moves us then on down to 7.7, communications and petitions for information. Does anyone wish to speak to any of those? Vice Deputy Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, just maybe through you to Councillor Smith. Just wondering with the BIA correspondent minutes, Jamie, I'm just wondering the Wednesday markets, the farmers markets, they've been delayed till further notice. Do you have any idea, like I know with COVID-19, it's all about COVID-19, but is there any talk, some municipalities have gotten creative with, with farmers markets and with social distancing and so on and so forth, space the vendors apart further. Is there any talk of that at all? Do you think you'll see a return to farmers markets in 2020, or is it pretty much a write-off this year?
Councillor Smith.
Yes, and through you, Mr. Mayor, this is a discussion that we've had quite lengthy discussions about at our previous meetings with the BIA. What we lacked at the farmers market was a sheer volume of producers. We were in jeopardy of losing our status as a farmers market in the previous 2 years because we've just lacked the requirement to meet the threshold of 51% plus producers. So we would love to use innovative solutions. We did enter into preliminary conversations with NPX to look at a electronic mechanism. What we don't have is a volume of producers with goods that are in the form of agricultural goods in particular to house that. We will continue to pursue that with other markets that are, I know Kincardine has a very brief, I think it's a 2-hour Saturday market that is now happening. Owen Sound is another great example. They moved to an electronic version, whereas ordering online quite early on for pickup and delivery. The benefits of the farmers market to the BIA are quite obviously that it brings people into the downtown to congregate and thus spend dollars in other businesses. Unfortunately, when we aren't able to produce those congregations of people, the value to the BIA businesses erodes a little bit. So to find people willing to put in the volunteer hours for that is a bit challenging. We know people love the market. We have a strong presence on social media and people would love to see it back. We're really hopeful that we can garner the agricultural producers necessary to make this a strong hold in 2021.
Thanks for that.
Anything else on the petitions for information? Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick plug for the nuclear industry. This webinar that's going to be held on Wednesday. I'm going to participate in that and find out the extent of the decommissioning project of the Douglas Point facility. This is just another example of the benefits of having this industry in our community, that it just even at the end of life there is work to be had there, and I'm quite certain that the decommissioning of that historic plant will result in many thousands of man hours of work, quality work in our community. So I encourage other councillors to tune in and find out the extent of that project.
And I would echo that and say that at some point, so later on this fall now, there's going to be a hearing about the decommissioning of Douglas Point. And it's my hope that the town of Saugeen Shores will make a submission at that hearing. So I would encourage all members to become aware of the details of this. At some point, we will be coming to council with a position on this that I'm hoping you will endorse, that I can then present at the hearing when it occurs later on this fall. So if there's nothing else on that, how about we move on then to reports of department heads? And the first one is an information report on the financial impact due to COVID-19 and the Director of Corporate Services.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. Just want to double check. I've had a few technical difficulties before. So about 2 months ago, I sort of gave you a first preliminary information on the impacts of COVID-19 that the town is facing. Through discussions with other directors and staff, we've sort of updated the amount, and the amount originally in my first report was about 62,000. And after we look at everything, right now we're looking at approximately $127,450,000 of a negative impact that we're expecting on COVID. This sort of takes us from a timeline we're estimating to approximately September, especially around some of the community services areas, because at this point we don't know what will happen more beyond September 1st based on the stage of opening in our facilities. So this is the best sort of estimate I can make for you right now. And we are sort of all in communication amongst ourselves when changes happen, because they happen daily and weekly, not as frequently as when we first started this journey, but it's still, some changes are still happening. So with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions to the director on her information report? I don't see any. Thank you, Sue, for this, for continuing to provide these updates and revisions as they go forward. As you say, things are changing, so it's a little difficult to you know, the things are, as soon as we get this report, something could well change that changes this outlook. But we do appreciate getting the updates as you have them so that we can track it. And I will say again, although the number has gone up since the last time, the town of Saugeen Shores has weathered this very, very soundly financially. You know, $127,000 loss across our budget is really a drop in the bucket. It's a very small deviation considering the size of the situation. So I think it's an indication that it's been managed very well by our administration, and also the fact that you're tracking it is going to help us. There's constant talk now about relief from other levels of government for municipalities. And so your having this information will allow us to make the appropriate applications or look for that funding when it becomes available. So excellent work, and thank you for it. So that then moves us on to the second report, which is information report on the Rainbow Crosswalk Award and the Director of Infrastructure and Development.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to give council an update on the crosswalk. Because it falls under budget, we moved forward with awarding to Miller Paving. This way they can order the paint, get the materials ready, and have the crosswalk up for the Labor Day weekend, with all hopes that the school is back in and can see the welcoming rainbow crosswalk when they return.
I think you just terrified the deputy mayor about this concept of school coming back in. The deputy mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's great news, Amanda. Thank you for that. A while ago, we kind of looked at, there was 3 options for the crosswalk. Are we still going with the one that was the general consensus, or have we changed that at all? I'd just like to be refreshed on, if you could at some point, let us know what the design was.
Through Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure that I follow what you mean by what the design is. You mean which way the stripes go?
Yeah.
Well, there was stripes, there was different, was it left, right? Was it skinny, long? But we did, there was about 3 options that were put out, and I believe we chose one of them. So I just remember, if you can find that again and just refresh us, that would be great.
Through Mr. Mayor, it's the picture that's on the information report. It won't have the white border, but it'll, I believe, but it'll have the rainbow cross that goes across the street with the small short distance will be the stripes.
Good enough.
All right, thank you. Further comments, Councillor Carr.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, to Amanda. I'm just curious, how come there's such a price discrepancy between the 2 quotes? Is there any reasoning between that? Are we looking at apples to apples in the paint and everything else that's going on with that, or is that just we got lucky?
They are the same paint. I think it was just the experience of Miller's in quoting this work and their willingness to do it at this price compared to the other contractor with not as much experience in this type of work and the cost it would take them to do the work.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions or comments? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, I just hope it's not lost on us. I know Councillor Schreider recognized that June is Pride Month at the last announcements by members, and I'm wholeheartedly, I'm very excited to see this go through as a part of the very last window of June, and I know there are many members of our community that look forward to this. I also don't want to lose sight of the fact that the report gives mention that Bruce Power has donated funds to ensure that this is completed within this year. So I just want to extend our thanks to the corporate sponsors at Bruce Power for making this come to fruition. I know a number of students and community members alike will be looking forward to that in later this summer.
Absolutely. Anything further from any member? Doesn't look like it, so thank you for that update and report, Amanda. And I believe that brings us to the end of the committee of the whole agenda. So we'll do a quick announcements by members and the deputy mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, As with everything, a lot of events have been canceled this year. This coming Saturday, the Jack Drury Memorial Football Tournament, which used to be held, they are holding a bottle drive to raise funds for that are shared with the high school football team and West for Youth Mental Health Online. So if you have any spare bottles or cans that you'd like to donate, set them out at the end of your driveway. And I'm told that they will be going around Saugeen Shores between 10 and 4, and they would gladly pick them up. And anything you can give will be greatly received and thoughtfully applied. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, the Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is just a quick shout out to Colleen Dossel. Colleen works in Community Service Department, and over the past few years, she's been, coordinating. It used to be called the Spring Cleanup Week, but now it's a community cleanup. And there is typically 150 people help with that cleanup, and I think this year there's 6 or 7 groups involved, and with a longer shoreline, where lots of cleanup happens. And Colleen does a great job with that, Mr. Mayor. And I just wanted to send a shout out to her and all the volunteers who came forth. The program still happens to June 30th, but lots of litter picked up along the waterfront, and so I just want to pass thank you on to Colleen.
Thank you, Councillor Schreider.
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith.
Yes, I do want to echo Deputy Matheson's comments regarding the bottle collection. Please have no shame in the volume of bottles that you may want to put to the curb. They are going to a great cause. So please donate as you can. I also wanted to give mention to the business, to Bruce. There are a number of grants that have been made available over the course of the last month or so. And as you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, we're going to get to this a little later in the regular council agenda, but there are a number of grants available to businesses in our community, one that was just posted this week and several others that were posted. Check out the Business to Bruce page, both webpage and Facebook, for more information.
Thank you, Councillor Rich.
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grace.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to commend our businesses. I haven't been out to too many of them, but the ones that I've been to, especially the ones that have opened in phase 2, I've been very impressed with how conscientious and courteous and diplomatic the business owners have been in really striking a balance between welcoming their customers, but also maintaining the standards that are necessary for social distancing. And I think that should be recognized. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, just kind of want to echo what Councillor Smith and Councillor Grace have said. Definitely want to see our community come out and support our small businesses as we do continue to reopen. I know already there's businesses downtown in Port Elgin, and I'm not too sure about Southampton, that have not reopened, that will not be reopening, unfortunately. And just because some of the businesses have reopened at this time, they're still trying to find their way. Things are tough. People need to realize that. People need to go out and support locals first. As we talked about already, the eBay and Amazon does not support our local town. We need to support our locals first. I'm going to keep on saying that over and over again. People need to be patient. Everybody's struggling through this. Everybody's got their own battles that they're fighting with their business to try and keep their doors open. We need people to understand that. We know we're all getting to the point that we're frustrated, but everybody's frustrated, not just the customers, not just the business owners. Something we got to deal with, and hopefully we can stay Saugeen Shores strong and support ourselves first and foremost. And after that, the Ontario and Canadian economy as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Mayette.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one thing. We in the police services and the police services board have been doing a bit of a restructuring of the hierarchy, and to that end, we've implemented one change just recently, and that was we created a deputy chief position, and I'd like to officially congratulate Inspector, or now Deputy Chief Kevin Zettel, on his appointment to that position. And if anybody is out in the community and happens to run across Deputy Chief Zettel, please congratulate him on his new appointment.
All right, thank you. Nothing from me this evening, so I'll take a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Rich. All in favor? We stand adjourned, and we will reconvene at 10 minutes to 9. We're all here. So I will call to order this regular council meeting of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores. And the second item is disclosures of pecuniary interest. I'll ask any member if they have a pecuniary interest they'd like to declare. Being done, of course, you can do that anytime if you need to. We have no additions, deletions, amendments. We have no public meetings. So that moves us on to adoption of minutes. And I have a motion that council adopt the minutes of the council meeting of June 8th, 2020, and note and file the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting of June 8th, 2020 as presented. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Grace. Questions or comments to either of those sets of minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Moves us then on to report of the Committee of the Whole and an Infrastructure and Development report regarding the McNabb Street reconstruction. And I have a motion that Council adopts the Infrastructure and Development report dated June 8th, 2020 regarding the McNabb Street reconstruction. Question, is there a mover and seconder? Pardon me. Moved by Councillor Rich, seconded by Councillor Grace. Questions or comments to the resolution? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. That moves us on to reports of municipal officers and committees, and there's a striking committee report of June 12th, 2020. And I have a motion that council adopts the recommendations from the striking committee report dated June 22nd, 2020. Are there questions or comments, or is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the Vice Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Schreider. Questions or comments to the resolution? Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank the striking committee for the recommended revisions that they made to the procedural bylaw. I am satisfied that these revisions strike a good balance between protecting the public's constitutional rights and yet respecting council's need to operate efficiently and in a thorough manner.
Thank you, Councilor, the Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a few comments. I wanted to, in particular, thank Councillor Grace. Cheryl, you did a lot of work on this, on researching and making comments, and striking committee took those and ran with them. And I just want to thank Linda White, Mr. Mayor, because our clerk is one of the most respected clerks in the province of Ontario, and does amazing work for this community, and is a clerk that we were so fortunate to have on staff. So I just wanted to thank her so much. And I'd want to make a couple comments on number 2 on questions. I had a few comments passed on to me from the members of the public about the procedure bylaw changes, and I think it's important for the public to realize that, when we talk about, members shall be permitted to ask questions, but shall not make statements. Other than congratulatory, I know there's always, Mr. Mayor, you've been, a little bit flexible with that in terms of making statements. I mean, and I know you'll reel us in if we go too far, in terms of making statements. I know it says, but shall not make statements, but I know you're always pretty fair with that. It's strong language, but just so the public are aware, we still are able to ask questions and send on congratulatory comments. So under number 3, I think it's important for people to understand, Mr. Mayor, what we mean when we say the refusal by the clerk of a request to appear as a delegation may be appealed to the mayor. Is what we're saying there, just for clarification, that if the clerk decides that it's not in line with our procedure bylaw and turns down the delegation, what we're saying there is that individual can go directly to you. Is that what that means? That they can actually approach you and you can make that decision?
I would say so, yes. And also any member of council can come to the mayor and seek a ruling. So as chairman of council, my responsibility is to enforce the bylaw, and the mayor has the ultimate authority to rule on the bylaw. And so the clerk, I think what this recognizes, the clerk is a greater expert than I am, but the ultimate authority rests with the chair to rule, and so that's what this does. But anybody, a delegate or a member, could come to the mayor and seek a ruling.
That was going to be my next question, Mr. Mayor. We still would reserve the right or have some say if we decide we didn't agree with some. We can present that to you, to the clerk, correct, or is it directly to you?
So according to this, the ruling of the mayor will be final, but I would say that a member of council has the ability to introduce resolutions, so two members of council could introduce a resolution to suspend the rules and hear a delegation.
Right.
If council a majority were to support that, then that direction would be.
Okay, good. Thank you for that. And I think number 4, is the 6-month rule, we were calling it, where a person cannot come back to council for a period of 6 months without prior approval from permission from council. I think that's a good change. And in that, if someone wants to come every 2 weeks, and there's room on the delegation list with new information, and I think that's the important thing for the public to realize and understand through these changes to the procedural bylaw, is that no, you don't have to wait 6 months. You have new information without approval. If you have new information, that's the key. I spoke to a couple of individuals about this prior to today's meeting, and basically what I indicated to them is that we simply can't hear that same message week after week after week from the same person. So that's a really good change, the 6-month rule, and I think it's a fair change. And I like the idea that open forum is continuing. I think that's something we started a few years ago, and it's had its ups and downs, certainly, with some of the presentations, but overall I think it's been very good, and people have been very respectful of council for the most part. And I think it's in return, council needs to be respectful of people presenting, and I think we do that. So the other comment I wanted to make, thought there was one other, just scrolling down, sorry. No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just following up on the Vice Deputy Mayor's questions and your discussion about number 3, and the fact that the clerk and the mayor are really going to be deciding, making the decisions on this. I think given the fact that we're changing from the 6-month rule, which had basically a restriction on the same topic, which is pretty easy to decide. The reason I think that the change in number 3 is appropriate is because here we're looking at whether the significant focus of the delegation is bringing new information. And I think for the clerk and the mayor to decide that, they're going to have to peruse the document in advance. They're going to have to consider that. And I think for council then to be making that decision in a meeting, for instance, I think that would be unwieldy. And I think I trust and rely on our mayor and clerk to make the right decision about whether there is in fact new information being brought forward.
Yeah, I guess maybe to be slightly more clear, ultimately, so the mayor issues a ruling, but the mayor is accountable to council for decisions on a broad scale in terms of and accountable to the bylaw, and council can hold the mayor accountable and censure the mayor or issue a direction that counters the mayor's ruling. So this council still remains supreme, as it were, in these decisions. Councillor Maya.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, I too have had a chance to go through these and digest these changes, and I'd like to congratulate all of those who were involved. I hear now that it was Councillor Grace that had the pen for a lot of this, and I think she's done a fine job, and the changes all make a lot of sense, and there's nothing that I can add to make them any better. I would just like to see, or I want to hear your opinion perhaps on when we pass these changes, that in the minutes it is noted that this is done without prejudice to any existing or future challenges to the rules as they were previously written or rules going forward. I think it's important to note when you're making a change like this that it doesn't change our stance on anything that might be going on.
Sure, yeah, the bylaw was what it was and will be what it will be, and we have to, I think council stands behind its decisions on its bylaw. So I mean, that's well taken. Are there any other comments? I just would say that I hope that the bylaws revisions receive broad support by council this evening, and if they do, I certainly commit to you to enforce the bylaw as it's written, and certainly I think my job is to be fair and try to be lenient. But but the reason for these rules is to avoid having the process be abused, and to avoid disruptions to council's ability to serve its core function, which is to assess issues facing the community and make decisions on those issues. And so I intend to enforce the bylaw fairly and kindly, but to be firm about it. And I certainly hope if we do receive broad support tonight, that council will stand behind the bylaw and its enforcement. So if there's nothing further, then all in favor? That's carried. So then that moves us on to the second report, a staff report on Spruce the Bruce funding. And there is a resolution that council support the Spruce the Bruce program for eligible Saugeen Shores businesses with a financial commitment of a maximum of $30,000 from the NWMO Reserve Fund. Is there a mover and second? Moved by Councillor Gray, second by Councillor Smith. Questions or comments to the resolution? I would just, Councillor Grace.
Well, I want to applaud your quick action on this, Jessica. I think it's a great initiative. This is the way our money should be spent. When we know that there are small businesses who need this immediate help, I think that's great. And I think it's wonderful that we're moving forward on this.
Further questions or comments? Agreed. I think this is, we already have, according to the report, somewhere around $18,000 worth of applications to this program, which are currently unfunded through the county's fund. And so our introduction of cash to Spruce the Bruce will immediately help those businesses. And that's tremendous. And there'll still be some room for some new ones to apply as well, which is also great. So I think it's a way to put some cash into the economy quickly to help these businesses adapt to COVID-19. And the other great thing that's important to remember is that Spruce the Bruce is structured around our own community improvement plan. So passed by this council. So although it's a county, the county is running the program and administering it. It's based off of a Saugeen Shores policy and Saugeen Shores made directives. So I think it's a really great idea for us to invest in it in particular, and to see our money spent that way on our own policies, on our own businesses. So, so thank you, Jessica, for bringing it forward so quickly. So if there's nothing further, then all in favor? That is carried. And So that moves us then on to the confirmatory bylaw, I think, yes. So I have a motion that bylaw 43/2020 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council of the town of Saugeen Shores is hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 22nd day of June 2020. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Carr, seconded by Schreider. All in favor? That's carried. And finally, I have a motion that this regular council meeting of June 22nd, 2020 hereby adjourns at 9:08 p.m. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Smith, seconded by Rich. All in favor? That's carried. We stand adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone.